Adam, if industrial design were flesh-eating zombie babies, you would be the apocalypse.
Welcome to EngineerVsDesigner,
The podcast.
For product design shop talk and an all-purpose 3D digital design geek fest. My name is Adam, industrial designer of CADJunkie.com.
My name is Josh, mechanical engineer of SolidSmack.com.
Each week's show is broken into three halves. First, we'll bring you the top stories from this week's 3D CAD news, brought to you by SolidSmack.com.
Followed by tips, tricks, and Q&A compliments of CADJunkie.com.
And finally, we'll talk with a special guest Paul McCrorey of McCroreyDigital.com, mechanical engineer turned render artist, about the transition to the Viz world, the best 3D tools for the job, and we might even get some advice on going indie.
Paul.
What up, man? What up?
What's your favorite gravy, man? Is it brown, white, or clear?
Dude, I'm going with brown all day long, man.
That is disgusting.
Right on.
Okay, Paul, we are hearing from you more as the show goes on. Josh Mings of SolidSmack.com, cue the stupid MIDI music. The time has come for you to immerse us in the deep waters of your CAD news knowledge. What have you got for us this week?
Yes, this week's SolidSmack update is brought to you by Kubotech, makers of Key Creator Direct Modeling and Kubotech's ECO Manager, helping you manage the downstream impact of engineering changes at KubotechUSA.com. Wouldn't you know it, Autodesk is continuing to make weekly news.
Look, dude, I am about to put you on Autodesk probation. That is 3 weeks in a row.
It's not the last. Tuesday, August 16th, they'll actually have another huge announcement having to do with design and AutoCAD. But now, this is quite interesting.
Especially if you enjoy jabbing glass under your fingernails.
Autodesk has released 123D Sculpt, an app for the iPad that will have you creasing, bulging, and inflating geometry with a wee rub of your nub.
It's available for free on iTunes for a limited time.
Lexion, makers of KeyShot, unveiled yet again their next version of Rendering Bliss, KeyShot 3.0.
They are overhauling the UI, introducing animation along with alpha and specular maps for materials, which basically means you're going to get more control over their appearance and more realism and complexity.
Mm-hmm.
They're also adding more import options. And if that doesn't sell you, this might. If you buy KeyShot 2 right now, the upgrade to 3 will be free.
Good stuff. Free is the key word this week. And if you're a Maxwell Render freak using SolidWorks Rhino or Cinema 4D, you're going to get all giddy about the new plugin for these programs that brings Maxwell Fire and a few fixes into the mix.
Maxwell Fire is the new interactive rendering component you might be used to seeing in things like PhotoView 360 or Modo, and also somewhat sorta kinda like VSR real-time rendering for Rhino. Nevertheless, the plugin is free for everybody who's already using Maxwell and available for download at maxwellrender.com.
Other interesting news, Princeton's college ranking finds engineering schools are among the unhappiest of all majors.
If I were an engineer, I would be unhappy too. MIT researchers have realized some robot skin they created can be formed to take the shape of almost anything, and you're going to want to check that out. Head over to Google and type in Engadget MIT robot skin and prepare your mind to be blown.
And Apple will finally accept your old PC for its reuse and recycle program, in which you may receive a gift card and a few giggles from Apple employees as they pound your old PC into tiny bits.
Seriously, free recycling of old computers is a pretty big deal. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this KeyShot 3.0 thing. I can't wait to play with the animation tools in particular. The on-surface decal demos are pretty impressive too. I really like that new UI, and by now listeners have probably figured out that I love Modo for the power and flexibility that it gives me.
Yes.
But the downside is that complicated interface. KeyShot cleans all that up, and I think for the, quote, 92.8%, I think it was, of industrial designers, KeyShot 3 plus animation is going to be pretty much all you need.
Yeah, actually, I can't wait to give it a little spin either. You got to remember, though, this is an add-on module, so you're going to be paying a tad extra, and it'll be interesting to see how it stacks up against the likes of Bunk Speed Move, which has been out a little while. And it will also be interesting to see how it matches some of the capabilities of the more advanced animation packages.
So, and what about, I'm just curious about this Maxwell Fire thing. We all know that Maxwell is a friggin' powerhouse when it comes to making ultra-realistic images.
Very nice.
But its Achilles heel, as far as I'm concerned, has always been the weak preview render. Maxwell Fire is going to change all that, and it really is making me take a second look. I would miss the modeling, UVing, and animation tools that I have in Modo, but let's face it, I almost never use that stuff. My biggest holdout with Maxwell is its somewhat daunting interface, frankly, but I guess that could be worth it. given the advantages.
Yeah, I've not used Maxwell Render for the very reasons you mentioned, but every time I see an image made in Maxwell Render, it blows my mind. It's a beautiful package.
So what about KeyShot 3 versus Maxwell Fire? I mean, are these comparable things? As far as I'm concerned, it's apples and oranges, and I love both apples and oranges. KeyShot is easy to use, it's clean, it's simple interface, stunning results in real time. Maxwell Fire, on the other hand, has a complex UI but lots of power, and truly breathtaking images within 24 hours or something. So totally different appeals, but both really impressive.
Yeah, I actually agree with you here. Both have the same price point, but KeyShot, it's much easier to use and pick up right away. And you also have an option, a pro option. It costs a little bit more, but it really extends the capabilities, higher resolution, and you get some turntable animation built in there as well.
Okay, so about this Apple recycling program, actually, I was really excited to hear about this. It's always been a shame to me that municipalities don't take care of this in most places, but I'm glad to see that somebody is stepping up to do it. Apple has always been, for a while now, they've been relying heavily on aluminum. And since it takes such ridiculous amounts of energy to refine it, aluminum is only really green if it's recycled. So they've needed this for a really long time.
Yeah, it's weird though that they only, for the longest time, only allowed Apple products in. But so it's nice that they're allowing the PCs into the mix now. But that doesn't mean people aren't going to opt to toss their monitor through the window and into the dumpster instead of shipping it off to Apple.
Absolutely.
That makes it a little complicated. So the cinnamon is nice on Apple's side and good for them, but most people not caring so much about getting a $5 gift card for some tunes.
Fair enough. Game over.
We have got to get rid of that buzzer.
Give us a minute to go. Take the cat out of the dryer, and we'll be right back.
Adam O'Hearn of CADJunkie.com. A cranky old bag lady told me you've got some old-fashioned tips of the trade to share with us all. What you got this week?
This week's CAD Junkie Q&A is brought to you by Kubotech, makers of Key Creator direct modeling software. Tired of complex feature trees? Kubotech's direct modeling approach is definitely worth a look at KubotechUSA.com. This week I was in Boston working with my good friend and collaborator, industrial designer Ron Vish. He's been struggling with a tough question that I thought we could look at this week.
Hey guys, my name is Ron, and I've been practicing for about 20 years. I quickly realized over time that as I was an alias guy early on in my career, I have found the need to be able to jump into 3D, but not to that extent. And I'm looking for a tool that can help me visualize and envision design concepts without getting too deep into serious CAD tools. So I'm looking for a suggestion.
So, full disclosure, our guest Paul, Josh, and I are all SOLIDWORKS users, but are not sponsored by SOLIDWORKS. Paul, what do you think?
Wow, man. Let's see. That could go in so many ways, Adam. If you're wanting to go on the cheap, I'm saying go with SketchUp. You can do all kinds of things with SketchUp. But if you're wanting to do product design, I'm going to have to push him back with what I know, and that's SOLIDWORKS, baby. And if you could learn Alias back in the day, SOLIDWORKS is a cinch.
Yep. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, well, at first I'm thinking it's quick and easy really the problem. I don't think it really exists. There's just an inevitable learning curve out there for each. But if you did have to choose something to get some quick concepts across, 3 come to mind, and that's, as Paul said, Google SketchUp. There's 3D via Shape and Autodesk 123D. All are free and easy to pick up, but also like Paul said, if you want to move up a notch, there's definitely programs like SOLIDWORKS, really easy to pick up, especially if you've had to go through the pain of learning Alias.
Right.
I'm thinking of things like Space Claim, or maybe even a Viz package makes sense for him. It could be Modo for that matter, if he's wanting to do relatively organic shapes versus Space Claim being a little bit more boxy stuff.
Yeah, if you want to do some organic shapes, Adam, I totally agree. Modo is definitely the way to go. It's just there is a learning curve, like Josh said with that, man. There's a learning curve no matter which way you go.
Yeah, there's also going to be Rhino, and with the T-splines component tacked onto that, you can get some really nice stuff.
Well, that's a really good point. I thought about Rhino, but I hadn't considered Rhino plus T-splines. That actually would make some sense. And actually Rhino plus T-splines and Space Claim work really well together as well. So you can kind of get a little bit of everything mixed in there.
Well, speaking of T-splines, if you did happen to choose SOLIDWORKS, they've also got a T-splines extension, which gets you more into the organic shape side of things on that.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, Now that I mentioned Space Claim, there's also this Kubatech Key Create as well, right? I mean, isn't that that's a little more engineering centric though?
Yeah,
is that right?
Indeed. It's very easy direct 3D modeling for sure. They've been around a while, so
I think that the main problem with using SolidWorks for a lot of beginners, SolidWorks, any parametric system for that matter, is that it's that darn feature tree that you and I love so much.
Yeah, man, that's a good one though. But gosh, the feature tree is so awesome, dude. I think it's time to jump on and learn it. But but back to Josh's point, the mini tutorials. If you go with a Modo, there is I think it's source3d.net. It has some great tutorials out there, free tutorials. There's tons of them.
CADJunkie.com.
And I was getting ready to say, CADJunkie.com rocks it with all kinds of both the Modo and SolidWorks.
One of the things that I found really surprising when I was teaching SolidWorks and Rhino at Otis College of Art in Los Angeles, shout out. I started them out on Rhino, mostly because that's what the curriculum said to do, but partially because I felt like, maybe it's like Illustrator, but 3D. Maybe it's something they could kind of pick up and just kind of dip their toes in the 3D world, and then they'd transition to SolidWorks. And actually, what I was really surprised by was that a lot of the students found SolidWorks easier from the get-go.
That makes sense.
That's been my experience there, man. I'm sorry, go ahead, Josh.
Oh no, it's just it makes complete sense. I mean, the interface is a lot simpler, easier to pick up what the tools actually are and what they do.
But that said, I would say that it does go both ways. There were students that just could not wrap their heads around SolidWorks at all. They just really had trouble.
If I was in that environment again, I would love to see how students take off with SketchUp.
Yeah, exactly.
And how and what they can do with that, because time and time again I see websites out there where people have started businesses just based on SketchUp, creating plans, woodshop plans and stuff like that. That's just incredible, and they've never used 3D CAD before.
Actually, SketchUp is becoming sort of the scourge of the prop design world, because so many people are wanting to use SketchUp because it's so easy, but then they're expecting that data to be useful to model makers and the like, and so it's been really frustrating for people because that data is so it's useless, pretty much.
Well, if you go with the free package.
What do you mean? What can you do with the Pro package?
Well, you can export it as different formats, not just the SketchUp, not just save it as a SketchUp.
Well, like STL and stuff, right? Though, but I mean, it's not like you can get an IGES or a step file out of it.
Actually,
you can get OBJ.
Or
can you do that?
Yeah, OBJ is fine, but I mean, I'm just saying you wouldn't be able to take this into Space Claim or SolidWorks and put fillets on it.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, not directly.
Well, Ron, it looks like folks around here think you're either going to have to live with the inevitable learning curve for a CAD package, in which case we seem to favor SolidWorks, or live with the limitations associated with consumer-grade solutions like SketchUp. Whichever you decide, make sure to let us know how it goes. See ya. This week we sat down with mechanical engineer turned virtual photographer Paul McCrorey of McCroreyDigital.com.
Before we talk about your biz, where did you kick off your engineering career?
I started off doing mechanical engineering for an ice machine manufacturer and quickly got into automation controls, believe it or not. So my career, I tried to find as much creativity as I could. So I was doing mechanical engineering. We needed some controls guys work. No one wanted to touch it. Some automation stuff. So I jumped on that and really kind of became a controls guy right away.
So were you writing a lot of code for that, or working with the kind of physical aspect of it, or both?
Yeah, well, both. One of the first things I did was design this automated test stand, and it was using a PLC, a programmable logic controller.
Yeah.
And if anybody has heard of this, it's called ladder logic, and man, it is. It's tricky.
Yeah, a lot of people swear by that.
Oh yeah.
So what happened? What got you into this whole rendering animation thing?
Yeah, so fast forward several years working for General Electric in the innovation group and getting my hands on SolidWorks there. That's probably about 5-6 years ago. Okay. And working with SolidWorks, doing 3D modeling, bringing concepts to life. Started playing with PhotoWorks, which was a very difficult package to learn, but man, it totally sparked my interest. Where you could take something and make it look real. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to talk about Modo a little bit? How you went into Modo after that?
So SolidWorks was a weapon of choice for me because I was using it in my day job, and then the connection between Modo and SolidWorks came with PhotoView 360, and man, PhotoView 360 just it was so much more intuitive. So as I said, I was very attracted by that, and I dove in both feet and spent all my time learning Modo. when learning Modo wasn't cool. You know, when when there wasn't a CAD Junkie out there to learn. I mean, I wish it's you know, we'd have hooked up a long time ago.
201, baby, 201.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. So yeah, you did the same thing, right, Adam? You've been on it for a while.
I've been on it for quite a while now. I went into it kicking and screaming, to be honest. You know, my old boss forced me to do it. To be honest with you, I hated it when I first learned it because it was so buggy. It would always crash. It was so, oh man, it drove me nuts. But after a couple of years, you know, and it just got better and better. Now it's a really impressive piece of software.
Yes, sir. Exactly. So for me, why do I use Modo? Modo has all the things I need. It has the ability to take in my CAD files, my client's CAD files. It has the ability for me to combine, you know, OBJs from, you know, external sources, or to make my own models in Modo, which I've learned quite a bit, and actually use CADJunkie.com to learn some of that as well. Another plug for you, buddy.
No, thanks,
you do
man.
a great job, man. But hey, so yeah, it does everything. And the other part that I really love about it, guys, is the animation tools. For me, they're fantastic. Yep.
It's definitely a big selling point. I actually even use animation in particular for creating batches of images. I don't know if you've ever done that.
So yeah, give me an example. What you mean by that?
Well, so for example, if I've got a client that wants to see, you know, I show them 10 different views of this thing, top, front, side, certain perspective, low perspective, high perspective, and they ask for one little change, then I hate to have to go back through and try to redo all of that. So what I usually do is whenever I do a batch of images like that, I actually set it up as an animation so that then I make that one little model change that I want to make and hit render again, and the next morning I've got my, you know, 10, 20, 50 images, whatever it is.
Man, that's a cool idea. That's a freebie for all the guys listening right now. That's a great tip.
Yeah, I'll throw out a second one too. You can use it the same methodology for if you want to do a bunch of colorways. So I'll do an animation where I have the 5 different views that I want of the product, and then I'll cycle that animation 5 different times, and each one I change the color, you know, the materials, turn on and off layers in the shader tree.
Sweet. I love that.
Nice.
What about you, Paul? Do you have any modeling and rendering tips you could share with the CAD junkies in the audience?
You really need to take the time to learn how to polygonal model. It's a totally different world, Adam, as you know, but we really will help your visualizations.
So can you give me an example of something that a reason why you think learning polygonal modeling is useful?
Yeah, so you bring in your CAD model, right, and you set it down this white studio, and that's cool and all, but man, you know, let's put it in an environment there. It brings it to life. Well, actually, let's talk about the client I'm working on now. They make a container, and so it's a folding container, and this is a shipping container that folds. And so instead of me bringing this thing in and animating it in a white environment, which I did, I've now basically built an entire terminal, shipping terminal. I've also brought in models from outside sources as well, you know, cranes and so forth. But now this model sits in this environment. It looks exactly real. As a matter of fact, some of their clients are like, wow, what terminal did you take this photo from? So that's
nice.
really what it's about.
Another thing that's really useful I've found about knowing how to do polygonal modeling is that sometimes you do these soft hard goods hybrids.
If you look on my site under the animations tab, you'll see there's a wheelchair there. And so most of it was all SolidWorks except the back part of it, which was a cloth. So I used, that's a great point, man. I used a vertex map deformer and a weight map deformer to make this polygonal SDS model fold down. And it looked very convincing.
So you work with a lot of different clients. What advice would you have for someone considering going into business on their own?
Well, that's a great question. You know how we talked earlier about selling perception and selling my vision? Then what I would think, if you're going to be a rendering guy on your own, you've got to really know the elements of good photography. And composition is everything. And so I've really become a student of photography and a student of lighting. Every time I look at a render, I am thinking, how did this guy is so awesome. How did he light this? You know, that's exactly how I go about it.
Mr. Paul McCrorey, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show this week. Thank you so much for your time.
Man, my pleasure.
And to the rest of you who've now successfully endured yet another headache-inducement experiment, thanks, but why?
It really defies rational understanding. As you know, EngineerVsDesigner is an experiment. We need your feedback.
Please.
Chime in on EngineerVsDesigner.com and tell us what you think.
If your ears are bleeding, go to the hospital. But before you go, be sure to punch us in the face by liking us, +1ing us, following us, or doing whatever else you kids are doing these days.
Special thanks to Ross Hartman for the sweet musical sounds you've been hearing. Show him some love at rosshartman.com.
We'll see you next week, and remember, without engineers, designers would just sit around with their MacBooks and sniff their Prismacolors all day.
That is true, and without designers, engineers wouldn't know what colors are.
Later.
Peace out. Cut.
It's a wrap.